It's accepting. So, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear. Good morning, everyone. I hope you well. Welcome to everyone who is present here, and especially today. This analytics So if you have any questions for each of the presentation, please send the shown on the screen. So first piece of this year. So without further ado, the first speaker, Mr. Yes. Welcome everyone. Thank you for this session. My name is Bansal. I'm an Accenture. This is the office, and I lead our transformation teams. Hopefully, when you get out of today's session, how do you get some value from data? How do you become the effective change in your organization? That's what I'm going to cover today. The way we structured the presentation, I'll spend that 30 minutes going through, and I'd love some questions. And please ask me questions. And then you can take the second. The amount of value and speed. That is all about data. My famous, I am using ChatGPT if you get some items. So it's just the end to see what balances it gives, but so let's get started. And let's say we're gonna I'm going to presentation for habits. Really, what is the opportunity? For your organization? How data and from the first drive that opportunity in your organization? Very well. I'm sorry, I'm talking to labor services. So I achieve something that just full business, not just AI. Get started. That's the fundamental question. So let's be clear. So what's the reinvention option? Right? Most organizations have been through a transformation at some point in time. Accenture oversees the trends because of the 20 years. I've seen them very much. So in 2013, I said every business is a business. And we kicked off a new program. I had Accenture back then to drive our business of region. You can see from the chart we predicted that 800 jobs digital, data, in the cloud, accelerated we saw the when we were expecting a chance growth of 7.5x growth, but it really came right? And we saw that if you organization, very deal with the lockdowns in Australia, deal with lockdowns, the uncertainty of the influence on that the recession, that's what I do. The shape curve. I would expect it just bounce right back. Now, on the other hand, seeing the opposite, high inflation, more unemployment for Australia, take that place, and have learned the way to the recession. So again, and so I'm extracting things. So what we're finding is if you have that journey, you're much better placed. So maybe I'll just ask a question of them straight back. How many of you can be about the transformation project or the organization? So this is not going to surprise you, right? What we found is changing very hard, transformation is harder. What we found is that 70% of the projects, transformation programs, not success of failure, but failure to achieve distributed changes. Why did you start the income transformation program? Why did you start your development project? Why did you start your CRM project? One of the things that you see on shoot is that when they're thinking of a transformation program, it becomes about technology, that's about the business, innovation, differentiation becomes a second thing. Data and AI becomes an afterthought. And most of the time, when you do a business case into the organization, into the transformation project, you'll say, I'm going to spend $10 million, I'm going to deliver $600 for the benefit, right? And a small fine frame says, yeah, you need some data, you need some analytics, you need some automation to actually achieve the benefits. 3 years down the track, you kind of missed the point. Right? It's always an opportunity for us data professionals to really get an organization and use that opportunity, that transformation opportunity to create the data foundation is just what I said in the organizational layer, so that we can actually accelerate in those cases, right? And so when we look at it, what we see, this is more research that we've done, and we just run some research on Tumblr. This is done about 600 what we found was you're either in three buckets, right? You're either a transformer, right? You're optimizing or you're an inventor, right? I explain the difference. A transformer is someone who's doing really good transformation projects, but very functional, focusing on finance, focusing on marketing, focusing on HR, focusing on supply chain, and not looking at your end-to-end. So not driving the full potential of changing how you run your business. And then you have the 6% that just like total, right? There's no transformation, but they're just optimizing the processes, right? Eating out, sweating the asset, but not really changing the fundamentals of processes. Create products that you can get with your clients, right? And then you have the 80%, the outliers, really inventing their business, right? That's what I'm going to focus on. These folks doing different, right? Now, it's a given the last 6 months of generative AI, and I can't without pushing generative AI. So challenge has also accelerated, right? Now, I have conversations with clients about right. Traditionally, you would look at the processes of the business at I need to implement these things, I need to implement and then I might say, I'm seeing that I'm in the middle of conversations with the CEOs and about actually giving a big financial solution. Generative AI to transform your function, and what's left deploy everything careful, right? That's what really that is. It's a deliberate strategy to think about your business and continuously change and transform your business. So when you're talking about, when you're thinking about reinvention, successful organizations think about how do I build that digital transformations we're going to for years. This is not about building a wall out. Right? This is about that flexible core of your business that runs your business, that lets you acquire new companies, change the shape of your business, and have economic events that happen. And the key thing is surrounding that with AI. It's a given that you're on the cloud, right? It's a given that you're going to apply that security. You have to think about platforms. So the first AI and not going to drive more value for you, right? So all the functions around it is given, right? As opposed to taking the approach of that's a lens function. I don't know okay, you really flipping the word, right? Most of the cloud. And it's not the same project that you have to do it. It's about taking a pause, and I'll explain that later on. How do you actually switch that concept? So one of the things that to be a reinventor, what do you fundamentally need to think about, right? Trying to keep it simple, 5 things, right? Invention has to be a strategy in your business, driven top down. Right? On the function, right? And it has to be business case. You've got to think about what is the value of doing this. Now, value means a lot of different things to different organizations. It's not just about financial value. It's about patient care, right? It's about the value can be some things. It's something about how you start their value. Beautiful and deep. It's really important. Then you used to call it policy architecture, right? We're talking about here is really thinking about what if you're doing, if you want to say running about funds, what is that processing of the organization? How can you automate from order operation to service? How do you enable it with data to really drive different destinations? Robotic systems and systems that might be. That's about right? One thing you cannot work with is talent, right? Scarcity of talent, right? I've seen it with Australia. It's only impossible to get the right talent, right? And the largest migration effort in the country. That's the biggest migration effort. The problem is about talent, right? And some of the speakers talk about those are trying to do it. I find them to get the right skills because it's a very different skill set that you need. Right? End-to-end process, you really got to think about how data and information is flowing through the processes, not just your systems. You can better understand, automate those, integrate those, and as I said, apply generative AI to some of those processes, right? Now, data doesn't have to be perfect, right? So you don't need to. The other key thing is you have to sit there and make sure that's what it's about. Right? You need to think about what support they need to get going. Right? Finally, it's about method generation, right? It's even the method generation. Don't wait for the program to finish the term to get delivering value, right? It's going to have incremental value. That's what you should deliver value. Otherwise, it's a project. Apologies, I'm not sure what happened with that. It shouldn't be right. It's an example of some of the value you get. For example, some of the benefits they got in the continuous approach. Again, I've anonymized the kind of sense of this possible. And this is not exhaustive. This talks about self benefits, but the key point is there's lots of benefits across your enterprise, right? You need to think not silos, you need to think broader enterprise. So if I really quickly kind of right? You might figure out so the first one of the top is a quick service restaurant. Take organization. A bunch of company restaurants, franchise restaurants, massive brand, massive transformation of their organization. Down to I ordered some drive-throughs, experience around, and one of the systems across the globe. That's how the restaurant they want you to have the same experience, which is the family the same experience the same. Right. A big organization like that, themselves, the drive has been very much multi-speed delivery, right? Keep legacy running. Driving the cloud with data and AI to really change the experience and you turn off legacy, right? Right? But their focus is very obviously customer-centric, all about automation and automation and drive change. I can't tell you but we see the today at a minimum, I think 5x return, some are getting 10x return. Right? And that's why this is so important. The medtech company, the notion of value for them is very different. Right? They do medical devices for and they have 86 for them, it's about patient care. It's about better care for their patient. Right? Very different concept of value. And again, very much focused on how do they change the way they define impact, how they engage with the patients, how they engage with surgeons, how they just their themselves in that direction, the space and surgeons, right? And for them, they're multiple systems, right? For them, it was really they simplified this and they connected this. The process they go to get with the legacy, right? And the key thing for them was connecting to the devices, your stents and your heart pumps, etc. Being able to get proactive information from the devices to IoT. Some of the physicians, right? And that's the transformation today, and they're extremely successful. Again, same kind of talent, right? So that's a key challenge in our is getting the right talent. I mean, you can't find the talent to train the talent. No. So now I was talking about Greg before we started, right? Boardroom conversation. The amount of organizations that I get data that we use. Yes, it's buzzword also, but they would be second. Why is it the organization here? And then you can control the CDO, right? So all of you are data practitioners, so I can professionals. Right? You appreciate us. So think about how you drive an organization in a different way, right? And it's not about, hey, I'm children, the data or a big house that I'm going to spend 3 months with this one. Very much just what zero, right? It's really about thinking that business system. So, as I said, it's not about just adding it up. Right? We all can do that. We can start doing this for 20 different cases, which applies to this for a long time. It's not about setting it up, right? It's really redefining fundamentally and the way you see organizational engagement in business, the relevance to the business, the elements to the function that you submit, the elements to the plus that your organization is creating, right? So now this IPTAL and the business building it up, right? And the exciting part is that most organizations forget about that they become interaction, right? How you get all of those together come up with something for the right outcome, right? It's not a play of replacing your roles, right? It's not thinking the jobs that you're looking at the speculation and this a daily task that all the state of the doing, but I'm sure you do it, right? I get a chance to be from that, I do that, right? So how do you, as I would say, if you come to a business, right? And this is a generic business process, okay? This is like every industry, right? If you have your position, the system that most of that is somebody else. The system can talk about the sensibility system, the setup system, the reality surrounding it, right? I mean, I'm also much of this solutions around it. Right? It's about thinking about how are you going to know what you're doing today and what you're going to do in the future. But it's not about requirements now. It's really a requirements ahead. That's how you manage your business, right? That's how you challenge your business. And then thinking about automation, what you automate with AI, what you automate with basic. I want to go in RPA, right? It doesn't have to be generative AI. Let's think of the things you can strip the things off the spaghetti of system that you're in, and start thinking about it. Now, saying all this out, what's left of the fair? I could simply probably to drive one, and in some combination with someone and separation and just that's what you think about. It's fundamental to thinking the architecture. Right? And then decoupling is right to understand the data, right? Because most people think of the systems, so that's what I believe in. No, it's about what's the flow right? And simple way of doing it is that the basis that shows you, right? It's next to I'm going to keep I won't spend too much time on this, but just getting you to think about it, right? So there's 5 pillars that I talked about. There's some fundamental things you need to put down. So I was let's do business of sharing times. These are business cases. They're bad for doing this, right? Most people forget to ask change management. So you want to drive adoption in your business, right? And generally speaking, very important that journey of work, right? Fundamentally, it's not that people it's not like what's happening, right? You should be able to do this for years and have a piece of right? And that very important. I'm just going to really quickly an example around the questions, right? The client that's really is global real estate, construction modeling firm. They have funded their management buildings in the city. 44 billion assets under management, 34 billion construction. Sponsored very much thinking about consistently changing, fundamentally changing his business, right? I went to the market and said, I'm going to take out cyber, how are we going to the costs through this, right? What are we going to do it, right? And then the challenge I put to the execs are okay, right? So they're doing fundamentally changing IT into together as we should, and to be completely cloud first, using out of box solution software from Google, investigation, AI, etc. Fundamentally changing across the globe. Now, this is transformational. That's goal is to transform the construction industry. You guys industry in the world, right? I think everyone should really get into those seven, right? And it's right? So when you're done enrichment, I'm thinking myself, how can I go into disrupt and change the industry itself? I can utilize the industry. So how he helps himself and his competitors better construction design. Thinking to better understand energy consumption, trying to understand and seven people traps right? If you want to control, right? Energy efficiency, things like that. But something that you can just file this in Singapore that actually saw this the shop
customers found six great sales and retail sales without introducing physical spaces. Active zones, interpolarity, tools and charts and touch points between brands, advertisers, app shoppers. Space invaders are unique contextual formats increasing wayfinding, inviting brands to surprise underground shoppers with targeted offers and content. Virtual takeovers in the real world.
No. So how do you get started, right? What you need to think about is right? Do you have the right quality of implementation in your organization, right? Of course, the attitude of that, right? What's the culture? You have a culture using solve. That this, right? Don't have the right talent. You don't know right talent. And that I this ecosystem, how you leverage the ecosystem. Don't have the right infrastructure and device, right? I so that just lots of files is I less than analytics. Or is just about have that's some of the experiment that's a wrong idea. So there's the payment that you right. So So before the question of I don't think that would be beautiful, but this is something that I'm about. There are various transformations. So the size of the flow, it's also to affect your approach. So how do you transform that? Them or higher and extremely value. It's something this is not really clear because I feel that for a while. So the example I showed you the IT and the digital organization had to get off the trade. So really, I mean, sounds very small, but there's no sense to have a software out there that people training content that you can do to the for that organization, 3 months, we train all the IT staff into the new tech, right? Digital was much harder because we needed to have groups very proactively and fundamentals of how good that was a very niche skill. So in that case, we recruit. Accenture brought some scale to them from so interesting enough, digital organization for them, they're looking not to Geo, Sydney, San Francisco, Singapore, and Ireland.
Thank you so much. So the next question is I'll try to be loud. Which industries you think are making the most use of generative AI? I think there's a lot of chatter about ChatGPT. So which industries do you think are making the use of generative AI? And where do you think there is more opportunity to drive value?
From industries, life sciences and banks. They are not going to investigate from banks, and banks are looking at it from a perspective of how do I use generative AI to provide better and less communication with my customers. I'd like to give them a different experience and they come to my online now. Life sciences, the question is very different. They're asking how can generative AI in healthcare and hospital, how can in aged care homes, etc. The conversations we're having. Those services are active. We started to get a lot of questions from insurance companies as well, very similar lines to banking. So the last question, sorry, sort of everybody got questions and just so there's a slides of them on that please. And the question, so I need to order on the section. Yeah, absolutely. I think the presenting is also the session so that would be available to you guys. So the last question is, what are the successful ones of the governments and how do you get the center of business and discuss at the CX level? So IT responsibility to take care of that. Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we're asking most clients to take a step back when they're getting governance because what you can do is you can spend $1,000 million getting to 98% getting governance and still not getting the value. Right. So when we're asking clients to start thinking about is domain-based architecture, first from an IT perspective, from a data perspective, but then also the domain-based governance structure, pushing back the governance into the business. So we can ask somebody your customer, choose their responsibility for the efficacy and the accuracy of the veracity of the customer data. I'm saying that I want to use customer data. I just have to share and get that data. It's it's a very complex process to go through, but that is most organizations are moving towards. Banks should be the same thing because you have to push the governance back to the business. You can't be on that IT. And you provide the tool that you can then shift the marketplace concept where you say I'm the custodian of the customer. I'm the minister of the marketplace. You are the marketplace, right? My shifting to the is the other component. Thank you so much for such a session. Please join me in the speaker. Thank you. So, our speaker is Chalee as well. She is the Senior EVP and Chief Digital Officer at Siam. She will talk about a subject that's very close to my heart. It is about using AI to power digital. So, Dr. Chalee, the floor is yours. And please join me in welcome our speaker. I really think last name, I don't no last name on the card. I think it's really sure, that's why we were right. So now you understand. I think maybe that's that's why it's that it's a verification. So that's on those kind of funny. But yes, I am from Siam. One of the things that I find very interesting is that I decided that well, everyone's trying to go all digital and trying to go AI. Every day, actually, something to this. So we have that vision, and also about the segmentation of some of your regulars and commercial bank. CDOIQ has kind of structured into the Siemens as a group. And it was one as a section that CVP is focusing on some activities. We said digital bank is so attachment, the kind of perfect solution just serves the windows on the upper segment where at least some amount of international feeling that and with that, I'd like to begin with a presentation on our journey and how it's today. So, I'm going to about Siam. I joined Thailand as a production. Once we step outside the country, we have to say SEVP is probably the largest bank. Number two, I think it's established around the 15 years ago. It has, if I'm not mistaken, the largest asset management assets to clients. We have 17 customers. Most of the is 50% of the channels and also interesting the the government has a centralized payment system which makes it very easy to transfers. Transfers is fine. So year on year, it's just showing this and stuff like 20-30% each year. So that's great for us because so this leads me to come 3 years ago. I was joining this bank. I came from a different industry together. I was from trading industry, and using that, our team was kind of moved over to the Sam so that I see that we would like to skip further. Here we go. Like this. Okay. Yeah. So this is the digital bank. The Germany. Sector. Yeah. So first we need a team. So when I joined the team, and so the reason is that we came from the quant industry, which has a lot of prediction elements into it. Like to make some predictions from the data you have invested. I think we invested at least 3 to 4 years prior to just kind of consolidating stuff into the data lake. But predictions from the data is still not that great. So Neha started as a supporting unit. And kind of went through the evolutions, more or less like the previous speaker, when Amit was talking about the evolutions of the company. We kind of went through similar things. We went to episode 2, where the data team kind of morphed into a digital team, digital business team. So in this sense, the vision of the management says, hey, we want to push data from people, the IT, and the infrastructure people, we want to the front line, try to create some business lines where you can make a profit out of it. And during that time, we were doing stuff like being trying to coming up with a score, and we spend a lot of time sort of building the infrastructure. As of this year, we've kind of entered what I call the episode 3. Human touch, thank you. So I'll do this as a cue, whatever I want to do. So at this point, the bank says, okay, let's take a look now at how digital we are. And I'm not proud to say that if you count the amount of AI enabled, like Chung was saying in the plenary, it's actually the single digit, despite having spent all the amount of effort to build the data, to build the data, to build the infrastructure. And then as I got into this, I found that there are a couple of reasons. One, banking is an industry where they hire a lot of history. In any given year, I would say that maybe 20% of the revenue would be considered as a new revenue. And the other 80% would be sort of the things that you have happened in the past, like long-term mortgages, contracts that you have signed with corporate SME loans, and so on. So banks just have this kind of a long-term stability. So in order to just push new things forward, you're not going to make a significant quantum going forward. So that's one reason. And two is that in banking, we saw in the previous in the plenary where they were ranking like, the amount of AI penetration in different industries. And it was quite funny to see that, banking, it's actually at the bottom. I was scanning through it. It's like, we found it. We're at the bottom, meaning the amount of penetration of AI is just not that high. And another reason is that there are areas where data and AI can apply really well. And it usually applies to where law of large numbers come into play for those who are statisticians out there, meaning it has to be generally in the area of, say, retail. Those where they're usually the first place where we do really well. And it has to be an area where you come in and disambiguate the uncertainty as much as possible. And in this case, usually it starts with unsecured lending, that kind of thing, where the borrowers are, you don't have as much information about them. And then with the AI coming in, any amount of clarity that you bring in would be a high value that you can generate. So usually the penetration happens first in retail and in unsecured lending. But now we come to episode 3 and we're like, no, we need to bring it to a significant amount of digital revenue, which brings us to this challenge where we say, okay, what can we build upon on the things that we have created so far? We have created, we have the data lake, but we transform it into feature stores where each customer is populated with at least 8,000 features and it's updated on at least a daily basis. And you can use that to predict. But that's great, but that's only retail. What about the SMEs? What about at least some of the mid-sized corporations? How do you do that? And then that's when we realize that the application of data would probably have to come in parts, and you probably have to add a little bit of human element, at least to communicate to the customers. For example, in SMEs, when we began the work to move from retail to SME, we found that One, we have significantly more problem with the data quality. There are many structural reasons. Small and medium businesses, at least in Thailand, don't always put everything into their books for various reasons. Okay, some of them have a different type of accounting. Some of them have different ways of accounting, which is, it happens too in the personal case, but there the law of large numbers would help you, meaning the statistics would be able to pinpoint who are the good customers. And if you predict who will have good credit, by and large, you would be correct. But the idiosyncratic cases in the corporate and the business case would tend to be a lot larger. So therefore, you would probably need to apply AI smart in the smart spot within this process and use maybe a little bit of human judgment to kind of drive this forward. If you want to achieve double digit, like a 30%, 40% revenue coming from AI enabled revenue. So that's one of the things that I learned. So digital banking, we are the team that's responsible for pushing ahead with this AI enabled revenue of the bank. And we are structured quite differently from traditional data team. Okay, it is a team that combines both the data. Okay, this is the fundamental, as people call it, the raw material, the new oil, the platforms, which is usually the apps where you have millions of customers coming in. As I mentioned, we have about 15 million of customers who are on the digital platform. And then we have the products and also the data analytics team, digital marketing team. The difference between this and maybe some other structure at some other bank is that we feel that it's important to create a tight ecosystem within the same department that have all of these, so that it's kind of more or less end to end. You have the data, you have the analytics, you have the products, you have the platform. So you can kind of go from conception of a product all the way to delivery as much as possible. And this turned out to be one of the key sort of success factors in in several of the consumer lending products that we have had, because instead of having to convert some of the traditional business units to say, hey, believe in this, the AI really works, you can just test it out and you see whether or not it works. And usually the customers will come back to you with some response. You can iterate faster, and that's how you deliver products faster. And this is, I believe, the unique structure of it that kind of makes it interesting. So here are some of the examples of the things that we have been using in AI. First, okay, our bread and butter, lending. So AI is more or less used in pretty much the whole value chain, from targeted marketing, the onboarding, and the key thing would be underwriting, which I sometimes call it the manufacturing of credit. Okay, previously manufacturing of credit, i.e. coming up with the decision whether I'm going to loan you and how much and at what interest rate, that manufacturing of the credit was a cumbersome and high cost process. AI comes in and essentially turned that into 1/100th of the original cost. No more paper, no more messenger to pick up your pay stub, no more people to upload PDFs. You can just glean from the data that they have, from the customers that have with you, calculate the score, and even pre-populate everybody with their credit score, even without them applying, so that when they actually apply, it's more or less becoming an unlocking of the credit rather than applying for a credit. And that leads to orders of magnitude in reduction in the cost to produce the credit, so to speak. And then you engage with them by you have smart insights, and then you even go all the way to collection, which is the collection in the lending world is, to me, a flip side of the marketing. You want to find the right moment, right time to reach the customer, so that when they have cash, they take care of the payments before they spend it on more discretionary stuff. So it's the opposite problem of the targeted marketing. So AI has been used quite well in our products. Next, please. It results in approval rate that's usually much faster. The default rate reduction is significantly lower, and generally people would cite it as one of the high satisfaction reasons when they rate our digital banking products. And the uptake of the products would
usually it's whenever we launch something in the digital product, the rate of growth would far exceeds the rate of growth that you would have where you would have to have a human in the chain. Now, that's great, but as I mentioned, this is great in retail. Moving this to SME, or at least small SME, small and medium enterprises, and to corporate, that's kind of like the next interesting frontier that we'd like to tackle next. We also have AI recommendation wealth products, which is a Netflix style recommendation saying like, hey, here are the funds that we would like you to check out. We're about to launch an explainable part of the AI. So the uptake is already much better when you do this hyper personalized recommendation list. But we believe that with the explanation on why we recommend such wealth mutual funds and so on would be another interesting result that we hope to gain even more traction. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can go ahead and click through this page. Yeah, so we're saying that with the AI targeting, the rate of the click-through rate will be significantly higher, especially if you factor in the triggering, the real-time triggering message, which can be a range of things. For example, we tried people reactions to incoming flows or reactions to when they start browsing wealth funds and so on. And with this different experiment, we are able to uplift the pickup rate by significant amount. We also have an AI insights. I believe for those of you who are in the local market, I think maybe several of the banks here offer this insight about your spending, where you're spending. Our customers love these, and to me, it's a free loyalty program. The more they bank with us, the more the sharper the insight tool we want it to be. We haven't thought about cross-selling it as much because we feel that we want to make sure that at least the customers see the value of this, and then of course down the line as we gain more traction, we will probably insert some of the products, a recommendation to fit their lifestyle into this. Yeah, so these are some of the statistics. The number of users has grown significantly, and whenever they click on the respond, most of them love it, especially when it's seasonal. For example, there was a period when the gas price spikes, and then during the 2-3 months following that, the like rate of the insights that talks about their spending on gas and fuel just increase accordingly. So with that, we get to see the trends on what the customers care about as well. We also have one of the interesting about this kind of problem is that this kind of insight is that we in Thailand have a unique situation where most of the payments are actually not done via credit cards. And by not going through the credit cards, it means that the categorization of the vendors are usually lacking. In fact, I would say that maybe even 95% of all the transactions are kind of peer-to-peer small, payments where even the recipient, even if it's a business, it would sometimes be listed as under a person. So the ability to sort of smartly categorize them, knowing that, oh, this is, even though the recipient is a person's name, oh, it's actually the satay that they're buying, for example, then you classify it under food. Moving on, we also apply the chatbot. The chatbot, I have to say, we, of course, also have an eye on the generative AI, but even before that, we felt like many of the customers are already responding very well on just, simpler interfaces. For example, having suggested choices for people to click on in the chatbot so that it's a faster way to talk to the customer, to the bank. And of course, we're in serious process to look into the generative AI to integrate that into the system as well. And then the Omni process, this is the process where you really want to implement the digital bank with human touch. You bring in multiple channels and make sure that conversations that happen in one channel is quickly followed upon when you switch the channel. For example, you can start with a chatbot, and then when you go to the branch, they say, okay, you were interested in this kind of product. Let me answer some of the key questions. So you don't have to repeat what you say. Hence, it's an seamless omni-channel experience. Okay, here's a couple of learnings that I have along the way. And I thought it would be interesting to share. The first thing that I found and I want to share is that friction is exponentially expensive. What I mean is that this is one of the experience that when we were coming up with loans and applications of loans, each click just represents a monotonic drop off in the customers who stay with you. So if you by the time you start, the funnel just kind of keep narrowing down. So by the time you got to the customers who actually engage in your product, if you inverse it, then it becomes like the funnel makes the cost of acquisition just exponentially expensive with each step that you're on. So one of the lesson that we learned from this is that at least when it comes to lending, just approve first and then adjust later. This is one of the key success of one of the products, which is that we say, can you just approve everyone except unless they're on the blacklist, just approve them first, even with a small amount, and then let them, as they provide you with more information, like, oh, I also own this. Oh, I also have this. Then you adjust the amounts. So approve first, then adjust later. Then you at least would have acquired them, and then they would be your customer already. And then this way is a much better way to acquire customers, in my opinion. Build it and they will come. Okay, this is a mantra that we too followed at least up until a year or two ago. We said, just build a platform. We even have a health related platform. We just say, build it and the customers will come. Why? Because once they come, they will engage and then you will get data and then you can eventually make money from it. After we tried a couple of these, then we realized that, wait a minute, this is actually very expensive. Because the minute you launch something, it's a race between cost and monetization. If you don't monetize them fast enough, your OpEx will eventually come up and catch up with you. So then our new mantra is that, okay, you can just build it and they will come first. You need to make sure you differentiate the traffic, and because not all data, not all customers provide to you the same value. So think first about the high value customers, attract them so that you don't have to fail this race, because many good projects may not live to see the monetization phase just because the cost kind of overtakes you first, even for a corporate such as us, which has the means to sort of invest. But for smaller organization, I can imagine it being even a greater pressure. And finally, the thing that I always remind people whenever I go to a data conference is that data is not the new oil. You never want to just collect data for data's sake. What you really want is the correlation inside the data, because correlation is the new oil. If the data is not predictive, you will never get anything out of it. So think about the correlation, i.e. The ability to predict something useful, monetizable, something that would, that only prediction that matters. If you cannot make prediction out of the data, the collection is not of value. And so you have to invest in the correlation, not in the data itself. So correlation acquisition is what you're really after, not the data acquisition. Thank you so much.
Scan the QR code and you can ask the question. By the way, the QR code remains the same. So while I see the question, Dr. Chalee, can I ask one question that I have? So you mentioned about customers, and one of the challenges is that you have to select the right set of customers. And you said that there is a law of large number applies. So for the customers who are already there with you for a long time, you have a significant amount of data. So how do you get to work with the new customers or new entrants? How do you look at them?
They are usually, I quite agree for the customers that we don't have enough history of the data. We have mitigations, but they are usually harder to monetize right away, which there are two cases, I would imagine. There are new customers who know what they want, people who come in because, oh, we heard that getting a loan at SEB is so quick because you do AI approval. So those people are willing to invest the time to kind of give you some information so that you can kind of transact with them. And then there's also some other mitigations which is about to happen in Thailand. there's an open data, something similar to open data, where you can kind of share information about within the banks industry. But ultimately, I still feel that holding on to the data is still more or less one of the most important things. And that's why we probably have to continue building the engagement features so that they continue to interact with us and generate preferences that are useful and data that are useful for us.
Yeah, the questions from the attendees are in. So question is, can you talk about the change management challenges and strategies to tackle such challenges?
The change management?
Yeah. So I think the attendant is asking about when you are integrating AI into the system.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. There's change that happens in the organization and outside of the organization. In the organization, there are those those believers that you want to sort of align with first within the organization, and yet since we're, like I said, we are an old business, there are those people who said that, hey, there's no way that this machine thing will take over us. Sure, just ChatGPT is cute, but I don't think it has any relevance to the way we do business here, for example. So for those cases, I start with the believers first, and usually I just slowly try to convince them. And also another approach that we tried within the organization is to do a digital track, meaning we would literally define a new product code where the product is more or less digital in nature. And then we just kind of run with it for a while with the hope that after we build from 0 to 1, they will continue to pick up from 1 to 0 after having seen some success after we launched it and see that, oh, this is the way you gain the traction. But during the 0 to 1 phase, I find that combining the BU, convincing the traditional BUs along with running it with our own, trying to solve problems that we sometimes face on our own, it just kind of multiplies the very, the unknown. So I would say, if I could, I would ask the board and the management to say, hey, let me separate this. I'll run with it. Maybe I fail, maybe I won't. But if it doesn't fail, why don't we merge after we bring it to the point where it's a 1, and then you guys can carry from 1 to 100.
That's a very interesting take, because when I was talking to Amit also, he mentioned that there is a lot more believer now on the top than it used to be like a couple of 10 years ago.
Yes. There's a lot of believer, but like I said, there are many people who almost have two minds about AI. They said, oh, AI is going to great. It's going to change the world. Like I said, oh, the chatbot is so impressive, but it doesn't work with the corporate lending or SME lending. They have this different thoughts about it.
So one question which is very close to my heart as well is, how did you solve the data quality problem for peer-to-peer without the merchant category code?
Oh, for peer-to-peer, well, there's a lot of work that has been done over the years already. We also found a lot of issues, but luckily we got to the point where it's just kind of smaller cases now. For example, there are people who lend to themselves, or there are people who start to figure out, oh, this is how you trick the AI on how to get the approval. Then they would just kind of transfer, among different accounts just to generate fake activities, for instance. Those we slowly kind of weed them out through, but it's usually smaller and smaller percentage of the cases. For corporate data, I think that's still a challenge that we're still building on. We start with the foundations, like, building the supply chain, who's supplying to whom. And so even that is still not very clean, but it ends up being, the silver lining is that it ends up being really interesting proprietary secondary data sets that are not available anywhere. Yeah. So thank you so much for giving such an insightful talk, and please join me in thanking the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Chalee. And please take a seat. Thank you so much. All right. So we have the next speaker, Michael Taylor, and Michael is a chief data scientist at Siemens. And he's going to talk about a very interesting topic on tipping the scales in AI, harnessing data and AI to enhance business value. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Michael to the podium. Can you check if the mics are?
1, 2, 1, 2, testing.
I think the receiver is there. Yep.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm very happy to be here today. So as the what I'm going to do, I'll try to do is just talk very briefly about this topic, tipping the scales in AI, how we harness data and AI to create or to enhance business value. I know you from the previous speaker, you had a lot of insight from the financial services. So as I was listening to him, I had like kind of a flashback because I used to work in that industry as well. But before I start, I just want to know, like, how many of us here are working in any type of asset-intensive industry, manufacturing? Well, that's good then, because I'm going to give you some perspective on how data and AI as well is used in manufacturing. And perhaps I will share some of my observations as I talk with many customers, clients globally, and supporting them in their own digital transformation. And then I will end up by maybe sharing some best practices, some best practices that I think could be very useful as you embark on this journey. Maybe the second question I will ask is that how many of us are actually applying or utilizing some form of AI in our companies? How many of us are thinking about it, doing some form of exploration and try to see exactly if there's any value here? But still in the POC phase and maybe thinking about how I scale this. All right. As we all know, in today's digital age, of course, data and AI are becoming increasingly important for us. I am not going to convince you about that, because otherwise, you will not be here. But by leveraging data and AI, organizations can gain valuable insight. I think this is also something that we all know. However, data and AI can also present challenges as well. And some of these challenges are preventing some companies to either scale AI or either adopt AI. And I will briefly talk about some of these challenges. I think in a previous speaker mentioned some of these already, like the data quality issues, maybe the complexity in some of the technologies that we use. I will talk briefly about that, and maybe share some thoughts on how we can navigate that. But we all know that to actually leverage AI, I think it always begins with really understanding what is the value in which part of our business can we actually apply this technology that can create value. So it always begins by understanding the business problem. I always believe that I think that is the foremost thing that you have to think about. Which aspect of my business will have the greatest impact by leveraging this technology? So the process itself involved defining the business objectives and understanding or identifying the pain point, explore some opportunities and see where I can leverage this. For example, as I mentioned earlier, I'm from Siemens. So I'm going to give you some examples, some of the challenges that we are trying to solve in the railway business and how we are applying data and utilizing AI to solve some of these problems. So if I guess, and I assume we all take public transport, specifically trains. We might be familiar with some of the delays that we encounter. We might be familiar with some of maybe spending more time on platforms waiting for trains, for example. So these are very, very significant problems, at least for the operators and the maintainers or the asset owners that they have to deal with. And we also know that for any asset-intensive industry, as the assets aged, they are more prone to defect. They are more prone to deterioration. And this deterioration might lead to significant disruption. It might lead to a lot of challenges that the operators or the maintainers have to deal with, for example, in a way, because you have to come up with maintenance schedules. You have to figure out, can I predict or identify fault before they happen? And how do I actually ensure that when my asset is at the depot for maintenance, I quickly understand and what the issues are, and maybe perhaps recommend quickly what are the steps or actions I need to take to remediate those problems. But also, I think, as passengers, also we also have some issues that on public transportations, perhaps there might be some safety or security issues that the operators might also want to think about. So improving or increasing customer experience is also an objective of operators. So these are briefly some challenges or some issues or some areas in the railway industry where operators and maintainers are trying to figure out exactly how to deal with these problems. Because, for example, just by looking at your maintenance, this might incur significant amount of cost, year in year. And so if you can apply or come up with any strategy that can minimize that, then that is something that you need to do. So we've identified areas where at least we can apply such technologies to help the maintainers become more efficient in carrying out some of these activities. So, for example, in Siemens, mobility, we have been applying this technology for some time now. But let me just share some examples here where we are actually leveraging AI and data to actually solve some of the problems I highlighted earlier on. For example, we are applying AI to, for predictive maintenance. So what that means is that, taking all this huge amount of data coming from the trains, for example, or railway tracks or the power systems. Applying different types of AI applications, we want to be able to predict whether some of these assets are failing. What is the time to failure? This is very, very significant information, because if I know that the train is going to fail or some asset is going to fail in the next 7 days or few days ahead, that will give the maintainers a lot of ample time to be able to do maintenance in an effective way. But this also might mean that I might be able to prevent any form of delay or disruptions along the way, because I can easily identify trains that are at risk of failure and then perhaps take them out of service and then schedule maintenance. So with this type of technology, you can enable or improve your operations in an efficient way. You can also improve your maintenance efficiency and tremendously. And another area as well, where we're applying this technology, is what I call like smart maintenance. So it's not only about predicting whether the asset is going to fail, but it's also about understanding, okay, what are the causes of failure? And then what do I need to do to fix these problems? Because one of the challenges that maintainers face is that the longer the asset, or let's say, for example, the train takes on the depot, for example, it increases your downtime. And if I increase my downtime, that means that I'm reducing my availability. And reducing my availability have some tremendous cost challenges. So the quicker I can diagnose the issue, the quicker I can fix these problems, the better it is. Then I can minimize my downtime and increase my availability, and that becomes a very winning strategy, at least. So with AI, we are able to look at all the diagnostic messages, the telematics information from the trains, and be able to identify faults before they happen, and be able to identify the root cause of those problems, and then able to also recommend what is the possible action that the maintainer needs to take to fix that. So with that information, something or a task that might take you maybe a week or sometimes months, you are able to do that in few minutes, for example. So that is a significant gain, a significant improvement. So these are some of the areas where AI really creates value. So not only in predictive maintenance, it also drives value in actually managing the assets in an efficient way. Because as I mentioned earlier on, when assets ages, of course, they are more prone to defect. So as they age, the defect rate increases. So what that means is that the cost of maintenance might also increase. So one other problems that the operator might have is that, is it cost effective to continue maintaining, or can I actually buy a new train or renew the train, for example? So there might be different strategies as to whether I just renew my entire fleet of trains, or whether I renew part of them and perhaps refurbish part of them. So there are many kind of strategies that you may want to apply. But all of these strategies will have some cost considerations to it. They might have some performance considerations, and they might also have some risk considerations as well. So, and these are also very conflicting in themselves, because if I want a strategy that's with lower cost, perhaps higher performance and lower risk, and it's very challenging because the higher the performance that I want and the lower the risk that I require, perhaps the higher the cost will be. So you can see how challenging this type of things are. So this is also another area where AI can help to come up with better recommendations by looking at all of these complexities, these kind of constraints and multiple objectives that are conflicting, and then figure out or make smart recommendations. So, but as you go about understanding the problems, applying some of these different technologies, one of the things I see is that to actually create value out of AI and utilizing data, you must be able to generate actionable insight. And this insight, you need to be able to act upon them, which then leads to the value that you want. Because by just predicting the failure of an asset, by just knowing something, I think it's not really going to lead you to anything if you're not able to act upon that particular information, which then leads to action. So one of the things that we have to understand is that by not doing anything, by just knowing something, sometimes it's good to just know something because that kind of intelligence is also good. But creating value means that I act upon that information. So from the data, you apply different types of analytics to it. This then leads to certain decisions that you need to make, and then acting upon those decisions then probably leads to the kind of outcome that you want. So actionable insight, as we all know, must be clear, must be concise, and has to be specific as well. So by using actionable insights to inform decision-making, businesses can improve their competitiveness, increase profitability, and achieve the overall strategic goals. If nothing else, I think this is something that perhaps, I think we all know, but just want to emphasize that acting on an insight, acting on some of the decisions, it's probably the most important part that we need to think about, because from the data to the insight, and then from the insight to the action, there are always these kind of loops. So having this kind of closed loop, I think is very, very important, because this is what actually leads to the value that we want. So I will venture then to say that not investing in digital assets, that is your data and AI capabilities, is no longer an option in the current age. So we have to do that. Today being a digital business is the expectation. It's no longer the differentiator anymore. So organizations with digital experience will realize growth, while businesses rapidly will fall behind. So I think, I'll be preaching to the choir here. We all understand the significance of this, that we are now at a point where not utilizing these technologies, not understanding how to leverage them, I think it's no longer an option. We are seeing already how the generative AI capabilities or technologies is actually transforming or disrupting many parts of the industry. So not investing in this kind of assets or these capabilities, I think is no longer an option for us. So having said all of these interesting areas where we can apply AI and see the value and the benefit out of that, as we go about doing this, there are also very significant challenges that we need to be aware of. At least in my experience in this industry now for a while, I have seen a lot of these challenges. And of course, we all know that at least it depends on the kind of statistics that you read, it is well documented that a lot of this kind of ventures, kind of project failed. Many of our AI initiative or digital transformation project failed. Quite a lot of them, and only a few successes. We have some companies already that are already having good successes today, and many companies are also having very bad successes with this. So at least from my observation, I have seen fewer of these challenges that customers or companies are facing. I think in the previous talk, the speaker already alluded to this area of data quality. And I don't want to, I don't know whether I can really emphasize this point. It doesn't really matter how sophisticated your technology is, your platform is. It doesn't really matter how state-of-the-art your AI models or applications or technologies are. As we all know, garbage in, garbage out. I think this is something that we all know, but sometimes I see that we don't pay too much attention to this issue. we have to pay attention to the quality of the data, because better data equals scalable and faster AI. But not only about data quality, there are also very critical data challenges also that I see that many companies don't pay attention to as well. And one of them is the data management challenge that I also see. How you manage your data, how you collect your data, what is your data strategy that you have as an organization. And then this is something that we need to pay attention to. Data democratization as well, how you make the data available to the rest of the organization. It's also something that you have to pay attention to. And of course, the critical part here is that data governance as well is something that we have to also think about. So in addition to data quality, we have to think about the management of this data. We have to think about the democratization of this data. And then on top of that, think about how we govern this data in an efficient way. And this is one of my favorite slides as I talk to people all the time about data and then how significant it is to AI, because we all talk about AI models. And my observation is that many people don't really understand what an AI model is and what is the role of data. So when we say data is important, or the quality of data is important, this is a way to visualize that, because a machine learning model is just a model data plus your prediction algorithm. So if the algorithm is state of the art and then your data is of a low quality, then the performance of that model is going to be super, super low. If you want high model performance, then you have to pay attention to the quality of the data that you have. But in addition to that, of course, you as data scientists, we spend a lot of time trying to optimize our models, do fine tuning, do hyperparameter tuning, all of these different things that we do. But if there are no learnable patterns in the data itself, if I'm trying to predict a particular target, but then in my data, there is no, as the previous speaker says, correlation, but I will go as far as to say, maybe not correlation, but causation, I think is very important. Because one of the things that, at least if you're deploying models or machine learning models, one of the things that you observe is that correlation is not sufficient enough to have very stable and robust models in production. You have to figure out how you train your models in a way that they are robust and they are scalable. So one way to do that is to ensure that at least the features that you're feeding into these machine learning models have some causal relation to the target of interest. Because the correlation, if you depend on correlation, then what that means is that as the data changes in the wild, that correlation becomes completely, it's no longer going to hold anymore. It might be true for your training data set, but it might not be true for the data that you have in the wild. So that is why I think it's not only important to think about correlation, but maybe think about the causation of that. Because if you think about causation, then what that means is that because anything that has some causal relationship to your target is bound to be true, irrespective of the environment that you apply that model in. So I will go as far as to say, not only correlation, but maybe also think about the causation as well. So in addition to data quality, data governance, and all of these different things, one other challenge that I also see is that the infrastructure and technical complexities as well. Because putting machine learning models into production, if you move past the POC phase, going into production, you observe or you understand that it is very, very difficult to do. It's quite a challenge. You have to have the right technology for that. You have to have the right infrastructure for that. You have to have the right skill set for that. People in the team that have the knowledge to be able to do that. So this is also one of the areas that I see that often prevent many companies from actually moving into production and getting value from all of these applications. Because it's very easy to do a POC. It's very easy to make some presentations about what the benefit of all this technology is. But to really get the value out of that, those models has to be deployed into production. And putting those models into production requires a whole new way of thinking, requires a new kind of architecture or infrastructure to support that. So as you know, if you haven't read this paper, this Hidden Technical Depth in Machine Learning from some of the Google scholars, I will recommend you read that because it's really interesting and very insightful. It actually reveals some of the technical depths that people need to think about when you put machine learning models into operation. So from this paper, one of the things we learn is that the ML part of any production environment is just a small part of it. So there is a whole bunch of other things that you have to think about. So of course, embedding this, you have to also think about the end-to-end architecture to be able to drive that. So ultimately, AI, to make a sizable contribution, organizations must scale the technology itself. We must optimize the decision-making, and we must ensure that we have very highly efficient AI production line to facilitate and to drive that. So in conclusion, I would say, as kind of a best practice, some of the things that I have seen is that make sure if you want to get the value, if you really want to harness data and AI to enhance value or to create value, identify the right problem, ensure high quality data, and ensure that AI is used ethically in compliance with relevant regulation. So with that, I will stop here and thank you so much for listening, and I'm open to any question that you may have.
Thank you so much, Michael. Wonderful talk. For question answer, please scan the QR code and post the questions, and I'll ask on your behalf. So you echoed a very important thing during your discussion, which I talk in the class as well, that correlation is important, but correlation is not causation.
Yeah.
And so I was visiting a rail company in a developing country. And one of the things they mentioned that safety is where they're using AI so that the tracks are safe. And we were in a discussion that how can we implement AI to improve railway safety. Now, one of the key questions that I thought I'll share with you, and you can share your thoughts on that. How do we use AI to change the behavior of the people who are in the working in safety? For example, even if it predicts that you need to do this predictive maintenance in next 3 days, how do you make sure that this is implemented by the people who are actually doing it? So do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's a very interesting question that I think we also deal with that, because, for example, the railway industry is highly regulated in a way. So implementing such technologies requires a lot of rethink and a lot of stuff that has to be considered, as you mentioned, the safety aspect to that. So at least one of the things that I have seen that's becoming successful is that mostly these strategies, if the strategy is coming from the top, then it's very easy, at least from the bottom, to be able to catch up with that. But also the other way that I've seen that to gain the trust of the people is to also include them in the process itself, so that they understand their own mental model that they've had in previously. It's also replicable or replicated within this process as you generate the AI models or the solutions itself. So that's in that way they have more confidence that okay, this is the way we are thinking about it. They understand what the AI is, because mostly, as you know, most AI solutions are black boxes that technicians don't really understand that.
Right.
So if they don't understand it, then it's going to be very difficult for them to apply the recommendations in a way. And then perhaps the last thing I would say is that start small, get the confidence, start up with POCs, and then put some let your solutions also be consistent with some of the ISO standards, for example, that governs the industry itself. So if your solutions are compliant to these standards, then of course, it becomes very easy for them to adopt and to apply that.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair thought. So one question from the audience is, what governance challenges that we must be aware of when we implementing AI solutions?
I think it's the whole area of governance itself. It's a very big topic itself. Of course, we have some regulations that might be coming from government or government entities that we have to think about. Like we have the GDPR, for example, in Europe. So these are things that we have to think about. But even from the organizational perspective as well, your own governance structure in terms of like who should have access to the data, what type of data they should have access to.
Right.
So these are all things that you have to think about. How you encrypt data, for example, if you have financial data, which are very sensitive data. Not everybody within the organizations needs to have that. So coming up with encryption policies and those type of things perhaps will be some of the things that I would think about.
Yeah, that's very interesting take. And so another question from the audience is, can you share more about Siemens AI strategy and how that has guided your data and AI foundation? For example, data architecture, choice of tools, operating model, etc.
Well, I'll just give my thoughts on this in terms of like what our own AI strategy is. As I mentioned, of course, Siemens, we are OEM, so we are also equipment manufacturers. We manufacture these assets, and then of course we sell that to either the operators, the maintainers, to the asset owners. So one of the ways that we try to do is that how do we support our customers to leverage this technology itself? So meaning that ensuring that all our products that we are developing are AI enabled already, and to ensure that the trains that we are building are already enabled to be able to automatically transfer data from the train itself to the land side and then into our own IoT platform that we are also developing. So these are some of the kind of strategies that we are applying, ensuring that we are building what I call like building for digitalization, but also ensuring that all our product, whether it's software or hardware, are also AI enabled, so that our customers will get the benefit from this technology as well.
Right. So this is the last question. And this is when I was working as a McKinsey consultant, this used to be one of the key questions, that how do you get buy-in from other department and management with more cost due to AI?
Yeah, but I think there is no one size fits all to this question. It is something that any large corporation will have to deal with. If you have like multiple business units, you have to deal with that. I mean, currently in my organization, so we are also having this kind of conversations, because how do you get other business users to adopt the platform itself? How do you think about the developing the platform itself that supports all the different BUs activities and things that they want to do? So maybe one of the things that I will say without to think about is that proactively engage the users, understand some of the challenges that they are having, and then how they might benefit from this platform, and then maybe come to that kind of understanding, so that the product or the solutions you're providing at least meets their own expectation as well.
Yeah. So I want to thank you, Michael, for such a thought-provoking talk. And please join me in thanking the speaker.
Thank you very much.
So after the lunch session, we have Mr. Kyung-Whu Chung, who is the director in Solution Engineering Asia Pacific in MicroStrategy. He is going to talk about a very interesting on a very interesting topic, which is optimizing human experience with integrated data insights, a case study from Pfizer. So please join me in welcoming the speaker to the podium. Thank you, and the floor is yours, and looking forward to your talk.
Hello, everyone. As a presenter, the biggest challenge that I can have is to be right after lunch. So I need to keep everyone awake. Thanks for joining the session. And we're going to talk about a little bit about the business analytics, the business intelligence. I'm from MicroStrategy. I've been in the data and analytics industry for about 20 years right now. I was lucky enough to be able to work with many leading organizations across the globe. And like, if you think about 20 years before, when I first started this journey, it was a totally different dynamic. People were happy about simple slice and dicing. It was a happy time, but now it's a total different situation. The data is more at the core of the business, and everyone's thriving to drive the business value out of using the data and analytics. So it is a whole new dynamic, and I'm so happy that we can have this kind of event where everyone's talking about the data and how to drive the maximum business value out of it. So very excited to be here. Today, the topic that I prepared is kind of, I was thinking, actually, I'm right after lunch, so that's my challenge. Well, what is the biggest challenge when it comes to using the data and driving business value? What is the biggest challenge to achieve that? If I ask around the people, some may say the governance challenge, some may say that the time to value, some may say some of the other stuff, some may say that the quality of the contents and executive buy-in. There can be a lot of things. But at the end of the day, it goes down to one very simple thing. It's the people. Like, the reason why we have data, the reason why we want to have a business intelligence, a business analytics in the organization is to really make decision with that. And who's making decision with that? It's the people. It can be the executive, it can be the CEO of the organization, it can be the CFO of the organization, or it can actually be the client-facing folks that we have in the organization. So the most important thing is the people, and how many people are using data to make their decision. That's the one very critical question that we need to ask to measure how successful we are in using data and analytics, right? So where are we is an industry. It's a very important thing to really think about. And I'll flash you some number. This number is from actually multiple researchers. And this number is after we tried so many different approaches to make things easier for the business users, like the self-service visualizations and all of those that happened after 2015. After doing that for 5 to 10 years, this is the result. It's 20%. We're basically asking the leading organizations in the world how many people are using data and analytics to make their own decisions. And the answer by average is 20%. And the leading organizations, the really, really leading data organizations, are answering about 26 to 27%. And it's a very interesting question, because if we ask this same question to the executives, it's actually almost 100%. But if we ask the same question to the middle management, it goes down to like 40 to 50%. If we ask the client folks, like the people on the ground talking to our clients right now, it's almost zero. So that's why, as an organization, it's only 20% of the potential data and analytics community that actually are doing it. And why? It actually goes down to 3 fundamental challenges that we have. The first thing is they are too busy. They don't have time to do that. If we're asking around the people who's meeting the clients, we can actually bring some really good insights using data science techniques and everything. Let's say that this client is about to churn and was a high value customer. We have the great information, but do the people, the salespeople or the client reps have time to really look at that information? The answer is most of the cases no. The second thing is, even if they have the time, do they have the expertise? Because something may take me 5 minutes, may take them 2 hours to figure it out. So the expertise is the second challenge why people are not using the data and analytics for their work. And the last but not the least is the trust. Because let's say that the BI platform is telling me that this customer is about to churn. Is it true? And if my other let's say CRM system is telling me that this customer is very loyal, then which one should I trust? And I don't want to make the judgment call. I don't have time and expertise to make the judgment call when the data is not trustable. So these are the 3 fundamentals. Everyone talks about it, but at the end of the day, after so many years of trying it out, we still have the same challenge. And today, I want to talk about how do we really break that barrier of 20%? Is it possible for us to get to 80% of the utilization or adoption of analytics? And in order for us to do that, I want to talk about a story of one of my the good clients, Pfizer. And their approach was a little bit, let's take a little bit of different approach. Every data initiative approach was starting from the data itself. How do we build a platform? How do we build the toolkits? But let's not think from that angle. Let's think about the people's angle, where they are, what do they do? Can we deliver the data and insights that we have to everyone's daily work? So what do they do? The client-facing folks, what do they do? Can we bring the insights to their daily work? Can we inject it? So that was the main theme that we discussed with the Pfizer when we first started talking to these people. So in a nutshell, this is some of the figures after the first, I would say, the major initiative was done. In total, we have about 11,000 people using data and analytics. It's not 100%, but it is way more than most of the organization will be thinking of. And I'm going to talk a little bit more detail about this, but most important thing is we are actually talking about so many of the CFC, so-called, the client-facing colleagues that the Pfizer is calling them. And they are using data and analytics to meet their clients and have the discussion with them. And then if you look at the BU perspective, it's 90% of the major BUs are already using the data and analytics for their daily business activities. And this is not because of some simple toolkits and everything for sure, but before we did this initiative, they already had the tools. They already had BI platforms. They already had BI tools and visualization tools and so on. But the result of running this initiative together, it actually is 2 to 3 times more at least compared to the previous version of running the BI platforms in the organization in terms of the adoption that we have. So where did they start? The previous version, they actually had multiple toolkits for the people. So people can actually use some tools to create the reports, some tools to create the visualizations, some tools to have the executive dashboarding, so on and so forth. So they were not really short of the front-end capabilities. They had the suite of front-end capabilities, but what they didn't do, what they thought about was, we should start from the trust. We need to have the trust function of trust foundation, and then we can think about the front end itself. So when they started thinking about this initiative, basically they came up with this requirement a little bit more holistically, basically not only talking about the front end user capability, but also thinking about the schema architectural level, the foundation level that we need to have. And they thought about a few things. First thing is, all the business content that we develop, for example, it's Pfizer. So let's say the performance of an individual product or performance of an individual client, it has to be consistent across how many number of dashboards and applications we're going to build. It has to be consistent. It has to be reusable. If they want to change the definition of the good sales reps, they wanted to have a consistent way of managing those changes of the business definitions across how many numbers of the applications that they have. So that was the reusability aspect that we really needed to have. The second thing is performance at scale. Now we are talking about tens of thousands of potential users, and we are expecting them to be actively using the data and analytics, not only just Monday morning before they have the weekly meeting. We want them to use data and analytics throughout the whole journey of their weekly activities. So how do we make sure that this performance is not getting impacted when we actually roll it out to that level of things? And then how do we make sure that the governance is there? So those are the key elements that was very important for Pfizer when they start thinking about this initiative. And this is basically what we've built. First thing is, at the end of the day, any business intelligence platform is sitting between the users and the data that they have. But how is very, very important. The first thing that they thought about and that we kind of initiated together is, let's consolidate the configuration and interoperation pieces. I don't want people to randomly connect to databases after databases to get their analytics done. So let's consolidate things, have a single layer of interoperability and the configuration. And on top of that, because it's going to be on top of a database, let's put a virtualization layer and let's put an abstraction layer so that I don't need to teach the business users how to write the SQL, how to join things together. So it's going to be pretty much the business language. I want this data, and let the platform take care of the complex SQL generation. Let's automate that. This is very, very critical because the business users will not need to rely on someone to change the data requirements or wait for IT to come back to me as well. So it's much more easier for the business, and it's much more efficient for the IT to manage the whole thing. And when we do that, of course, we take care of a lot of things like the governance and likes of the data security rules and likes of the optimization rules. So it doesn't have to be like each and every individual implications to have their own governance rule and optimization rule. We consolidated that into a single layer. And then the last but not the least, we even collect all the usage information of the data for each and every individuals. So these are the foundation layer. These are the foundational components that we needed to have to implement the front-end applications. So that was a step number one. And there are a few front-end applications that Pfizer has built. And the first thing was actually targeting the CFCs, the client-facing colleagues. And actually, many years ago, I happened to have a discussion with the guy who was running the BI program in the company. And at the time, he said the biggest challenge that they are facing in terms of adoption is the fact that especially the client-facing folks they don't like computers. And they're having trouble with double clicking. So at the time, actually, his idea was, let's build a newspaper about your own performance for the day. So in the morning, I'm going to have a newspaper, put it out in my desk. But the good thing happened after so many years is that now they have a better device than paper, which is iPad. So what they did was they basically build an iPad applications, which kind of like replaces this kind of newspaper for your own business. And in one application, they can actually get access to all of their necessary information, without really having to do anything else. It's very, very critical. It's very, very effective. And for the CFCs, it's very immediate for them to understand the business performance and where they are, and even to the level that how much commission that they're going to get. So it actually is a very good way to communicate and make sure that people have the first touch point and better understanding about their performance, as well as, you know, make it as a habit to take a look at this application. So it's a habit, and it becomes very, very effective. Of course, let alone the fact that it actually works in a way that we can push the alert and push the notifications to the users so that they will actually not miss any critical information at the critical time as well. But any good analytics will lead to this critical thing called the follow-up question. So if my performance is not good, or if I'm running a team of the CFCs and my team's performance is not good, I will immediately have the follow-up question. So that's one of the stuff that we considered as well. So for those people who will have the follow-up questions, the experience doesn't stop at the mobile device or iPad at all. So you can easily convert it into your web experience, and then we build a portal that people can just easily go and then take a look at the data, drill down, slice and dice, create additional visualization, so on and so forth. So very, very seamless transition, same data, same criteria, same definition is being used when I do this ad hoc analysis as well. Sometimes this follow-up question is a very, very tricky thing, because if you are developing a dashboard or a report, what you'll be thinking is, okay, if this report goes to my manager will actually ask maybe these 5 potential questions. I better be ready to answer these. But sometimes he goes random and he asks the 6th question that I couldn't really anticipate. What happens is I will actually need to rely on someone. So analytics is always a circle from the user perspective. So I will have a question, I will get the data to answer the question, I will analyze it, and maybe it will lead to the follow-up question. And that follow-up question, in some cases, it will require me to re-look at the data that I have, because the current data does not really support it anymore. And that's when everything breaks, especially when we think about this business people, because those business people do not have knowledge to do something like this. Because for the data people, it's a language that we use. It's probably easier than English, but for those people, this is a language that I have never thought about. I don't even want to learn about it. And this is when they go back into I don't like computer type of mindset. So what we did with Pfizer was that, okay, let's simplify it. I talked about the automatic SQL generation as well as the virtualization and abstraction layer earlier in the slide. And we basically changed that experience to something like this. I will basically just pick and choose like a shopping cart. I want to see the market and the product line and the key top performance in my territory, and I want to see this number for this KPI, and the platform will generate the SQL automatically, so that from the user perspective, I don't have to rely on someone. I don't have to call someone and then wait for the data to come back. I don't have to learn how to write the SQL, because everything is just a simple shopping cart experience. So they will be able to just continue from that. And once I create my own content, of course, I can publish it back to the users as well. So these are some of the examples that actually was created by a little bit like an ad hoc manner. But even when we create an ad hoc manner of the contents, they actually adopt the kind of mindset of the application. So everyone who's creating this new content and want to publicize this thing, they will actually create this with the concept of a product. So this data application is a product itself. It gives a user experience where users can jump in and then use the content as if it was like the first mobile application that was built by the IT. So the entire cycle of analytics, having the first question, having the follow-up question, going deeper into the database, which was not in my original data set, and publishing it back to the relevant colleagues, everything is seamless experience for Pfizer. And that's the critical elements that allowed us to achieve that goal that we had over there. But that's not the end. We still have to think about one very critical thing. Let's say I created a dashboard and I want my people to use that dashboard. The dashboard looks fantastic. The content is fantastic, but will they click on it? It's a very fundamental question. Will they click on it? Because even if I create a beautiful thing, if they don't click on that dashboard, it's not going to get used. The CFCs, again, like they're not the people who's sitting in front of the computer all the time. So what's going to make them to click on that content? And the approach that we are taking over here is something like this. So what if there's a kind of information about this prescriber or doctor who's prescribing the medicines, and maybe it will have some really advanced calculations out of our the data science team and stuff. What if we build that into a format that is embeddable in any application? Let it work at the browser level. For example, if someone is using a CRM tool, if a client name is mentioned in the CRM tool, for example, like Dr. Sush is mentioned over there, why don't we make it show up there? Like they will never click on the BI tool and look for this specific individual. Why don't we make it show up there even before they ask for it? If this person sends me an email, why don't we make the information show up in the email client itself and then let them take a look at the data and then make a decision whether or not to ask the follow-up question? So that's what we did. And that's one of the areas that we are trying to kind of excel a lot more. And this is some of the screenshots, some of the examples of the things. Because basically in the web experience, it basically going to show up there. Just put the mouse on top of it, it's going to show up there. And the same experience happens in the email client as well. It's going to scan the email client. And then if there's a name mentioned or the email is from such individual, it will actually give that data points right within the Outlook client itself. So that's something that we call hyperintelligence. And it is really, really game changing especially in Pfizer situation, like we have the CFCs, because first of all, it's not creating new content. It's actually not creating a new insights or anything. It's using the insights that we already have and make it show up everywhere. Make it show up in ERP, finance, HR system, email, etc., and make it pervasive as possible. And this is going to drive the adoption extremely high. This is how one of the key techniques that we can use to break the barrier of the 20% adoption rate. So what's next for Pfizer? There are a few areas to expand. The first area is obviously the CFCs and the new markets as well. The second area that we're looking at is the end user capability, where they have more ad hoc capabilities to analyze the data and stuff. And the last piece is to really help the data scientists even to really kind of expand their value of the result of the data scientist work throughout this platform. And speaking about the future, there are a few things that really kind of drive us to the next level, but it only is possible because we've started from the ground up. We didn't start from implementing one feature after another. We actually started from building a platform that's going to support any number of combinations of applications. That's why we think the platform itself is the critical elements to get started with all of these. And because we have the platform already in place, we can actually do a lot more innovative approach to data and analytics. So let me just give you a few examples of the innovations that's happening within Pfizer and within MicroStrategy as well. First area is, let's think about certain KPIs that you have in your organization. Everyone has their KPI. And I don't want to look at the KPI every day. Every day I go on Monday, I go on Tuesday, it's not going to change at all. But what if we use a little bit of the machine learning or artificial intelligence capability? So just ask the AI to take a look at the KPI. And if something happens, just give me the insights and send me an email, and I will take a look when you send me the email. That's one area that we're working on to really even take the next step to the future. And this in fact, because we have the platform, wasn't a very popular approach that we had in many of the clients. This is actually a screenshot of one of my clients who actually built a smart bot on top of MicroStrategy platform. So you can basically ask business question. It will give some insights to perform some simple analytics, and it'll give you the insights. And I can even have a one-click to the dashboard and content itself. And AI is such a very interesting topic. I just gave you two very practical examples of how we can leverage the artificial intelligence on top of analytics. But if you think about the whole analytics experience, I like this because I think IBM was really clever to come up with the name Watson, because they don't want to replace Sherlock Holmes. They want to help Sherlock Holmes. They want to be Watson for the whole thing. So my last point over here, when it comes to the artificial intelligence together with analytics, is can we actually apply the same technique? Especially now we have things like ChatGPT. Can we leverage those techniques to really be the Watson throughout the entire analytics cycle? And that's exactly where we're going with this approach as well. So, for example, it can be as simple as I'm looking at a dashboard, and then I can get the help from ChatGPT type of LLP to get better understanding about the data that I have already on the screen. That can be one example that we can take. And one level deeper, we can actually have the authoring experience augmented by the ChatGPT engine as well. So basically ask, I want to create this dashboard, and then please give me the dashboard. And then after I have the dashboard created, maybe I don't like it. Maybe I don't like the aesthetics of it. So change it a little bit, change the color theme to something. So we can leverage this as an assistant for me to do this task a little bit. And it can actually be creating individual visualizations as well. For example, I can just type it in. I want to create this visualization that gives me X, Y, Z. And then it will generate the visualization. And I can also ask the AI assistant to change it a little bit, to change it to descending order, change the color theme and stuff like that. So it's going to make my life easier. I'm not doing something out of nowhere. I'm doing what I am doing every day. I'm just getting the help from the LLP engine to do my task a little bit better. And of course, this experience can extend to the experience of the data modelers or data engineers as well. So in MicroStrategy, we actually start everything from the data virtualization and the abstraction layer. When I want to create the data virtualization or data model or abstraction model, I can even get the help from the ChatGPT engine as well. So these are the angles that we are going to when we take a look at like what's the next step of using analytics, especially together with artificial intelligence. So as a conclusion, in MicroStrategy, we believe that this all needs to happen in one single platform. Because I was talking to some of my clients over lunch, and basically we had a new situation where there's a new regulation rules. You know, everyone's talking about the data governance and data regulations these days, and especially today, everyone's talking about it literally. And what's going to happen to your existing contents, existing applications? I can implement the visualization, I can implement dashboarding, I can implement artificial intelligence application. But what's going to happen if someone suddenly asks me to implement such and such regulation rules about the PII information? If you had one platform that was supporting the whole thing, you change one thing. You change one thing, it will apply to everything. So you're safeguarded for the future. Your innovation is not limited by any upcoming changes at all, because it's one platform that's going to be the foundation layer for all the use cases and all the personas that we are talking to. And that's our approach in MicroStrategy. And when it comes to the front-end application, of course, we are the most comprehensive platform in terms of the end user capabilities and the use cases as well. So that's what I want to share. And we do have a booth at the end of this hallway at the small corner. But if you have any further questions or anything, I'll spare a few minutes to answer any questions, if any. But if we don't have enough time, please feel free to visit our booth at the end of the hallway. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much it was very eye-opening to me when I saw the application, and I had so many questions about using NLP, and I saw that you already have everything integrated there. So while you can scan the QR code and ask your questions to the speaker, I wanted to ask you one or two questions which I had. You talked about habit building, right? So for example, I used to look at a particular dashboard, and now you're asking me to look at a new dashboard and then make decisions. How do you make sure that people are actually looking at it and making decisions?
I think that's a very good question. And I think that was the biggest challenge that we had as well. And the simplest answer or solution that I found from my personal experience is actually to give the first touch point, whether or not they like it or not. Just give the first touch point with the data points. And then if the data points is going to raise a follow-up question, then we need to basically just make sure that they have the tools and ways to learn from that moment. But we oftentimes forget about the importance of the first touch points with the data and analytics. And that's what, I spoke about the hyperintelligence approach, which is one of the ways to solve that.
That's very good. Another question I have was regarding the one strategy. So Pfizer is a very big organization. But let's say there are organizations which have basically very customized or very diverse teams. So how do you make sure that it is one, but at the same time customized at a very different level? For example, between R&D and marketing or sales team who can look at different aspects.
Absolutely. I think the platform to be able to support an enterprise scale of variety, the platform has to be flexible enough. And the experience has to be flexible enough so that they can actually tailor the experience to their own needs of the individual. And also, if it requires like heavy customization or coding, it actually breaks the whole thing. So our approach is, we actually made like almost 90% of all the customization more of a configuration perspectives. So it's going to be super easy and straightforward for any new organization to adopt the new things.
Yeah, and I have one question from another question from attendees. How forgiving is your offering to the quality of data? Like how much? I think the question is regarding the quality of the data. How does it affect your?
Very good point. I think so. Quality of the data it starts from the data itself. So if the data is not at the high quality enough, we cannot make it better for sure. But where we come in as a very key value provider is, we have to think about the fact that you give the same data to 10 people, I guarantee you they will come up with 10 different conclusions. And they will come up with 10 different versions of calculating the same thing. And that's where MicroStrategy can actually help to streamline that and standardize those things. So when it comes to the quality of the data, up to the point that we have this consolidated data storage, that is something that we need to take care of from the data quality perspective. But the analytics perspective of the data quality is where you need to think about the platform approach.
Yeah, and one last question is, I think this is stemming from the previous talks we had in the morning, that how do you ensure that your correlations are not are basically identified well with respect to the causations? So basically, when you are modeling the data or modeling an output, how are you taking care of the differences between it is not just a pure correlation or not by chance, and there are some causality established there that it is.
So it becomes a little bit technical, but basically there's a level of abstraction. So we don't abstract from the database table structure to the correlation, for example. So there's always going to be the virtualization or the abstraction from the physical perspective, how the data should look like from the technology standpoint. And then if we create one field defined in the platform, then actually you can define additional fields, additional calculations on top of the same thing. So if you define a correlation, you can actually have multiple correlation defined on top of the same set of the data if needed. Yeah. And then after that, it's more about a management mechanism or policy that we need to apply, because we don't want people to get confused either. So there's a lot of like small techniques to make sure that people understand what it is and people understand which one to use in which cases.
Yep. So I think that's a very insightful and very eye-opening talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And please applaud for the guests. Thank you. So, Neha. So our next talk is going to be presented by two speakers from Cigna. So please welcome Raymond and Neha Gupta. Raymond is the CEO of Cigna Healthcare Singapore and Australia. And Neha Gupta, she is head of data and analytics Asia Pacific, Cigna Healthcare. So they are going to give us a wonderful on a wonderful topic. It's insights from the top, a CEO's perspective on the strategic use of data and analytics in health services. So Raymond and Neha, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
So she wouldn't leave me alone. She was trying to force me to approve a budget on the new toys that we're going to build in Cigna. So she followed me here, by the way. So insurance and data analytics, when it comes together, it feels like it's a super boring topic. And in a very nice rainy afternoon, I will try my best not to make you fall asleep. But by starting maybe to ask the crowd a bit of a question. Are there any drivers in the crowd? Anyone drives? Do you use your GPS? How many times did you defy your GPS direction? No? Yes? And you ended up somewhere else. Agree? So when I used to live in Hong Kong, and those who have been in Hong Kong will realize this, right? The moment you defy your GPS, you will end up somewhere else. And it's almost impossible to come back to where you started. Now, equally, I want to challenge this GPS thing as well, right? So if you are familiar with Singapore, if you drive along Nico Highway and there's Beach Road on the other side, did you know there's a secret way that the GPS doesn't know to get yourself to Beach Road in a second? By cutting through the car park with Plaza Hotel. So my point of saying this is very simple. Data is a very rich source. If it's not structured, it's useless. Data is a great asset. If you don't have the analytics to derive information out of it, it's not useful as well. So just to share a little bit of what we do, and from a CEO perspective, challenges and some of the insights. But before I do that, this is the corporate thing. I need to tell you who we are. So we are a leading health services company. Let me just bring you to the slide here. We are operating in 30 jurisdictions and countries. We have about 15,000 employees, still counting, and we service more than 7,000 corporate clients, and we have 13 million customer relationship globally. So our main job is really to improve the health and well-being of the people we serve. And by having a mission to do that, a lot of data is required, because in healthcare, data is so rich that you sometimes don't really know where to start and how to start. So I qualify, we are a very legitimate company. Now, going back to the serious topic, post-pandemic and pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, coming out of pandemic, there's a lot has changed. Now, one of the things that really affects all of us is our health and our awareness on health, and the importance of prioritization of health actually rose up the rank in a lot of things that we look at today. Now, in the global healthcare industry, we've gone through a huge transformation. Our claims pattern and analysis and trend completely went haywire. We no longer were able to use the old model to understand risk, to understand our forward dynamic trend when we project medical trend. We have to remodel our trend and re-understand where and what's happening to the members and the claimants. Right? One of the things that came out really significantly that has changed is as simple as wearing a mask. When you wear a mask, I start to see claims that relates to skin, mask skin. When we take off the mask, when the regulators say take off your mask, I start to see claims from cough, flu, fever coming back. And when the regulators say go back to work from home, and I start to see a lot of physiotherapy claims coming into my book. So healthcare is so sensitive and so dynamic with public health and policies. And without the right data, we are blindsided and we are not able to price and take precautionary action and give our corporate clients or members the right advice. Now, another thing that you may be surprised at, being a health insurance company in Singapore, right? You will be thinking, okay, yeah, most likely, you have a big bunch of actuaries sitting in the office, underwriters and operation people paying claims, processing documents. That's not really true. Large part of the people in my office are nurses and doctors. Why so? Because we need to understand episode of care. We need to understand what is right and what is wrong. Providers can prescribe very bountiful, full complex surgery or operation procedure, but the question is, do you need it? Patients and laymen are not able to tell that. So one of our value add as Cigna and the healthcare company, we look at the procedure. We have nurses, doctors that intervene to direct to the right appropriate level of care. This is really critical. And then when we look at the well-being survey that we have been conducting over the last 9 years today, we found a lot of trend. We started this survey and we started collecting data. We start to realize that more than 50% of the respondents in 2020 actually asked their employer to increase their benefit cover to include health screening. So the needs has changed. And when we look into the ongoing survey this year, 88% of the respondents actually try one or more way to improve their mental health. So we never talk about mental health. Imagine pre-pandemic, mental health was a taboo at workplace. But we are an equal opportunity with diversity inclusion company. We are very proactive in this area. Even in my workplace, nobody talks about mental health. But today, post-pandemic, it is a simple word to bring up even at work. It's real. And we are trying to conduct some analysis to prove that there's a comorbidity arising out of a mental health issue. If somebody has a mental health issue, they might end up, having some physical disease or physical health deterioration without even knowing that it started because you were overly worried about something. So you often develop into something more important or something worse. And then you cannot walk away from any health insurer meeting without us mentioning this word about medical inflation. So medical inflation has shot through the roof. Cost of drugs in cancer has gone almost doubled over the last 2 years. So the bill is getting bigger. And in the latest 360 survey, 73% of people in Asia-Pac and 72% of people in Singapore felt that their ability to meet their own or family's medical need is only fair or poor. It's not a good thing, especially in Singapore, where we are a very affluent economy. Okay. Let's move on to talk a little bit about the digital transformation. So leveraging on insights from data analytics not only can help us optimize our service for patients, actually it helps us to develop more innovative and personalized solution for patients in the areas of preventative care. Now, Neha is going to share with you one of the examples that we have actually tried out, which is a specialty care. We used claims data and we try to predict a possibility of somebody having something. And then having an intervention from a nurses to bring this person into a specialty care pathway. Therefore, the person is guided in a way that they know what kind of treatment they need to do. They know how many sessions they need to go for it. And then they have somebody who check in and say, hey, are you getting better? Can you imagine if you go to a physiotherapist and then the therapist say you need 20 sessions? And then you should really ask yourself the question. If you are a cash paying patient, you will say, actually, why do I need 20 sessions? Can I just do 5? But most people, when they're on insurance program, say, hey, can I have 10 more? So this is quite important for us. We deploy some of the digital capability to help us predict some of the ailment on the preventative side. And that takes a lot of pressure off the healthcare system, which is already overburdened, right? Fraud, waste, abuse, big time. And the outcome is very simple. In Cigna, we believe in 1, the best clinical outcome for our members. 2, the best financial outcome with no compromise on quality of care. How do you do that? You can't just do that with going in and negotiating with doctor, using the past prognosis or data. You need real data to predict and the average bill size to actually go negotiate. So that's why data became a very valuable asset for us. Now, the role of it in all health insurance companies, as mentioned earlier, 1, it helps to improve risk assessment. So we underwrite the risk, we price the risk. We price the risk forward for the next year's premium. And how do we do that? We need to predict the trend based on the historical trend and the evolution of costs. So we price premium forward, we price trend, and data help us price most appropriately so that we do not overprice a risk. Now, that also leads to better claims management. Why? Because now we have a whole set of data to understand deviation by percentile. What is right and what is wrong, what is more and what is less. And then healthcare is also very personalized. If somebody has a high reading on cholesterol, we will not be giving them supplement of vitamin C, right? So we will be providing them lipidol, we'll be providing them Crestor and helping them manage their cholesterol level by looking at their health biometrics. Is it improving or not? You know, you need to do a 3-month check. The government has also institute that every 3 months when you draw your chronic disease drugs on cholesterol, you need a blood test. And then also when you take Lipitor, you think that you're going to be okay, right? Then you start to realize that, hey, maybe the kidney may not be working because Lipitor actually hurts your kidney for some people. And then you do blood tests, you look at your kidney matrices. So it is all data. And then when we think about the targeted and preventative care outcome, data can also help us collect a lot of different predictive modeling technique, which Neha, we can share some of them with you to target on intervention. When do we intervene? And when do we come in to reduce cost? The whole idea is not to stop somebody from claiming, but to make sure that somebody is claiming right and receiving the right treatment. I'll just give you an example. The national average for outpatient visit to a GP is 6.5. If somebody goes to a GP 12 times a year, something is wrong, right? So our nurse will actually pick this up as a symptom tracker and then go talk to intervene into the members and say, hey, actually, are you going to the right place? So that helps us become a more thorough custodian of claims funds. And most importantly, my favorite topic, it improves operation efficiency. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the GPS example, right? The GPS asks you to go straight, you turn left. Now, if my data is saying that, hey, we are not, our cost per claim is going up and I'm still not going to slow down or improve the efficiency, I am actually blindsided by, making losses in that sense. So overall, data analytics can help health insurance company make more informed decisions, improve patient outcome, reduce costs. Now, as a CEO perspective, right, we are constantly battling priorities after priorities, and the ROI become a very important topic. Okay, we can say all you want about the shiny toys that we see out there. Everybody wants to have the most advanced technology, predictive model, and whatnot, right? But prioritization or return on investment is very important. And when we talk about prioritization or investment return, we don't look at the total spend of data analytics. We look at the initiative. What is this initiative driving? And we use the ROI by initiative. And that will help you make better decisions and trade-offs. Because if you use a single bill to look at data analytics spend, you're not going to be able to be very happy because likelihood your ROI is going to be very low. Because large part of your spend is going to be on infrastructure. Okay. And then the other thing I also want to remind all the colleagues here is we need to also make sure that we have the right talents. Without the right talents in organization, you can't really have the right analytics. I mentioned you have good data, you don't have the analytics, so it's not really going to be really helpful. And promoting an organizational culture of data analytics embracement is very important. You need to believe in it. You don't believe in it, then you're investing for nothing, right? So finally, before I hand over to Neha, this is what she told me because we were going through 20 prioritization on data analytics. I said, I want this, I want that, I want that. And Neha always remind me one very important thing. You need to begin with an end in mind. What are you trying to solve for? Then you can actually build backwards to understand what solution you need. All right. So thank you so much for the time, and I'll let Neha take you through some of the examples of how we deploy data. Thank you.
Thanks. You're coming back to questions. Thank you. I hope you found that interesting. Ray spoke a lot about prioritization, the journey that we've taken at Cigna to set up a central international health-wide DNA function. So just talking a bit about the journey. So most health insurance companies, there is a lot of data, right? Every claim that somebody claims, inpatient, outpatient, we go through a data file, right? So sometime in 2019, a decision was made that we will centralize all our resources into a single team. Before that, we had multiple regions being serviced by data and analytics folks, data scientists, engineers, all across different markets, working in silos. So since then, we invested in a multi-region cloud-based platform. Over a year, it took us to set up the data governance function. Obviously, there is a lot of PHI in the data that Cigna holds, a lot of healthcare information at a member level. Setting up ingestion services, one of the biggest challenge, and I think one of the speakers before me spoke about it, like multiple source systems, having different data sources, bringing it all together, and then trying to analyze as a whole can be a massive challenge. Initially in the journey, we were pretty much doing a lot of descriptive analysis, typical data set. We are going to do a lot of basic information, setting up the foundation, and then continuously going back to our management to say, okay, invest in the foundations. Let's build a core of data, which to Ray's point, people don't see an ROI in, right? People don't understand that you need fancy cloud systems or you need to give your data science certain technologies. Nobody understands that. Took us a while to get there. Continuous involvement, we moved towards more predictive models, more machine learning models, and setting up the global products framework, which essentially now starts looking at the real problems. Again, Ray spoke about, what is it that we're trying to solve for? So key areas within a healthcare company where we are saying, okay, our clinicians need help. They need data. Our payment integrity team. So there is a lot of chat of fraud, waste, and abuse within insurance companies. They need help. Our finance colleagues, actuarial, marketing, network, just negotiating with different providers across. All of this needs data. So we've now set up global product teams that span across international health, trying to solve these problems at a global level. So that led to another issue. Now imagine you've got a limited number of resources, but so many million customers to serve and so many data problems to solve. How do I prioritize? How do I get the right issue looked at? So that's where value-based prioritization comes into play. So we've got a detailed framework where we look at, okay, how we are going to deliver the most value, looking at a case-by-case basis, what is the value? And before anything comes through the DNA funnel, it actually goes through a detailed process. Cross collaboration with other markets, I think has been interesting, but also very challenging, trying to understand different people's perspective and priorities. Since then, just moving and quantifying the impact. So I think it's a journey. We are well 5 years into the journey, but there is a lot more to achieve and do, and with continuous improvement. Given I've been told that time's taken by Ray, I will quickly come into a case study that I wanted to share with the group. So we build all these data sets. Now we've got all the data centralized across our different source systems for our multiple markets. We released a global product, which basically looks at claims analysis. Very simple, uses a cloud platform. It is very much a descriptive analytics tool, gives you utilization, gives you benchmarks. It tells you where your spend is going. Right. And probably the audience is thinking, so what? There is so much talk of augmented analytics, augmented intelligence, artificial intelligence. And she's talking about, just basic insights from data. But to give you an example, this is an actual case, right? So we present this to our clients, we present it to our corporate clients, and we tell them, okay, these are the top conditions that your employees are claiming for right now. And we do this across the board for multiple clients. Now, imagine the COVID period, everybody is working from home. And I think Ray mentioned it. Musculoskeletal claims shot up across the board. Now, whichever client we are looking at, MSK is coming out as the top diagnosis. For different diseases, someone's got neck problem, someone's got back problem, everybody is rushing to physiotherapy. So we looked at this data, and we decided that, okay, MSK program, we need to do something. So our data science team has actually built, using the descriptive analytics, a machine learning model that looks at and predicts what is the incidence or what is the probability that somebody would end up with an MSK surgery. And the intention is, can we catch these people early, put them through a nurses-led program, whereas, they get proper care, they get multiple sessions of physiotherapy, and hopefully the outcome is not surgery for them. So can we detect it early And once we've detected it early, can we do something about it? So it just doesn't end there, right? You're probably still thinking, okay, she spoke about some, very descriptive analytics and a predictive model. So what? I think one of the key things that we've done differently is we've exposed the underlying factors or the features that predicted the surgery risk for our clinical staff. So our clinical staff knows what is the basis of this decision, what cohort does this individual belong to, and do I need to tune in my case management program for this particular individual? An example at the bottom is, say, a male member, 40 years of age, located in Singapore, nationality is Brazilian, works in the education industry. We think he's a high risk for MSK surgery because they've had a certain spend in the last 1 year for MSK. They've had so many visits since their last visit. They have visited this particular practitioner. So we can actually give you the cohort that they belong to. And depending on the cohort, you can actually customize the case management program for the individual. So I feel exposing some of these features can actually be helpful and continue to deliver the interpretability of the models. Otherwise, it's a black box. I can say X number of people, put them through the program. Obviously, it has led to some interesting outcomes for our clinical teams. If you look at some of the slides here, neoplasms, Ray spoke about cancer drugs being pretty high up there. Neoplasms is also a condition that comes up within the top 10, right? But there are conditions that we feel as a practice we can action, but there are conditions that we can't do much about. There are certain diagnoses that Cigna as an organization cannot do much about. But the musculoskeletal care program has helped in, delivering a whole person health. That is something that is very dear to our hearts, delivering better outcomes for our patients. Similarly, you can predict models, you can have predictive models for diabetes, you can have predictive models for cholesterol. So there are other programs within Cigna that help out with some of these conditions. And again, quoting some of the surveys that have been surveys that have been conducted by Cigna, 73% of surveyed office workers in Singapore reported having pain in at least one of their body parts, including common conditions like knee, back, shoulder, neck pain, all potentially solvable through the right level of care, physiotherapy, and hoping does not end up in like a more intervention treatment. So within Cigna, across the globe, we have a lot of opportunities to improve quality, reduce cost, and better health outcomes. We weigh different opportunities by looking at the data, consider what is possible through a case management program through engaging in different ways, and take action and generate a list of opportunities where we actually have better outcomes for our customers. So I think within the data and analytics team at Cigna, we are tackling not just clinical. I spoke about a clinical case, but we are also working quite actively on fraud, waste, and abuse models, a lot of network-related strategy and models, and typical analysis for your clients. So I think with that, Ray, you want to come back up? He wants to sit there.
Yeah, so thank you, Ray. Thank you, Neha, for such a wonderful talk. So please, attendees, you can ask questions for Raymond and Neha. And before they type and ask you a question, I wanted to ask, so Raymond, feel free to come here. So one quick question I had, and this is maybe a little close to my heart. So I was looking at some policy for my family members, and you mentioned about mental health and physiotherapy. In Cigna, I saw that it's covered, but many places or many, most of the policies, if I look at, they're not covered. So basically people know it exists, but employer do not want to even cover it because it may increase their cost. So how do you think that AI and analytics can help to convince your client that this is what we need because it affects your actual work in the office or actual works in the in your organization? Do you have any comments regarding this?
Yeah, not so much on if you don't have maybe go to the beginning of HR practices. So it really depends on your organization. If the HR benefit design or philosophy includes equal opportunity, diversity, inclusion. If your company has that type of policy, most likely you would have coverage for some form of mental wellness cover. And in most companies, especially some of those that has employee assistance program, they too actually have access to that. Now, it's not so much whether how we can use data analytics to inform the decision, but all this survey that we are doing here clearly is a population health numbers. It's not just company specific, it's real.
Yeah.
And MOH is also talking about it as well. And MOH, in fact, the last 5 years has been pushing out mental active living campaign. Now, the thing that we found segue to the question is the utilization on mental health and the definition of it is very confusing. So do you know the difference between psychology treatment and psychiatric treatment?
Prescribed drugs.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, absolutely right. But a lot of people, when they find that they have some form of anxiety disorder, first thing they do, they go see a psychiatrist.
Yes.
But the psychiatrist only give you drugs. They do not solve the root cause of the what the talk therapy can do to help you overcome by not being reliant on drugs. So our claims data and our plan design and even our nurses actually help you guide. That's why I mentioned specialty care to help you guide and get access to the right care. That's really critical.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just one point to add. On the AI side, not a Singapore or a Asia example, but on the US side, I have run a machine learning model where you basically come up with the best design suited to a population based on cost optimization for the employer and perception of a benefit. So does X person aged 40 with a family need psychiatrical visits or not? Should I include that design in their plan? But in the US, it's possible to customize to that level, not so much outside of the US market.
Great. So one question, and it is like a request. Is the survey that you mentioned, is it the report is available publicly for people to look at, or?
Visit our website, www.cigna.com.sg. It's free for downloads. Right, Larissa?
Yes.
And next question is value-based prioritization. Do you track ROI and hold leaders accountable?
Yes. That's my favorite topic, part of my job. So we do. So there is a monthly operating review model where we speak to entire senior leadership team at International Health for Cigna. And every use case that gets prioritized has a person owning it, has a dollar value attached to it. And it's part of my KPI and my team's KPI to deliver it and for them to operationalize it. So if that outcome is not achieved, there's no way you're proceeding forward. So it's pretty tight, I would say.
This is quite interesting and eye-opening to see. So please join me in Raymond and Neha for their wonderful talk.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Neha. Thank you so much.